The NFL didn't ignore Patrick Mahomes. That's not what happened. The league saw the arm, saw the plays, saw the talent. What it didn't fully understand, at least not yet, was the size of the problem. Bill Belichick did. That's what makes this story so good. Because 7 years ago, while most people were still treating Mahomes like an exciting young quarterback with scary upside, Belichick was talking about him like a structural nightmare. A quarterback who didn't just create big plays, but changed how far back a defense had to think, how long it had to stay perfect, and how much field it had to survive. And the wild part is, Belichick said it before Mahomes had even become the full version of himself. And if you like football stories where the truth was sitting there the whole time and most people still missed it, hit like, subscribe, and let's get into it. This story isn't really about Bill Belichick spotting talent. That part was easy. By 2018, anybody with eyes could see Patrick Mahomes had a ridiculous arm, rare mobility, and the kind of playmaking that lights up a highlight reel. What made Belichick's Red different was that he didn't talk about Mahomes like a fun young star. He talked about him like a quarterback problem. The kind that forces a defense to cover grass it normally doesn't have to cover. The kind that punishes sound football anyway. Back then, Mahomes was still just a first-year starter. Belichick was already describing traits that would become the league's headache for the next 7 years. Quick processing, fast release, accuracy, extension outside structure, and an arm strong enough to stress the field from almost anywhere. That's the point of this story. Not that Belichick knew Mahomes would be famous. He knew he was different in a way defenses would hate. And coming from anyone else, that might have meant nothing. Coming from Belichick, it meant everything. Bill Belichick's opinion hit differently because he didn't watch quarterbacks the way fans do. Fans see arm talent first, maybe the highlights, maybe the box score. Belichick looked at something colder than that. He looked at what still works when the coverage changes late, when the rush gets home fast, when the window is smaller than it looked before the snap. That's why his respect matters. He spent years forcing great quarterbacks into ugly games, taking away first reads, muddying clean pictures, and making offenses win left-handed. So when a coach built like that starts talking about a young passer with unusual respect, that isn't casual praise. That's evidence. And the Patriots knew Kansas City was a different kind of problem. During that 2018 week, Devin McCourty said the Chiefs had top players at multiple positions, created challenges teams didn't usually see, and were hard to truly mimic in practice. He described Mahomes as poised, unorthodox, able to throw on the move, throw back across the field, and make plays only he can make. He also said Mahomes played like a veteran, even as a young quarterback. That's what gives Belichick's words weight here. He wasn't getting swept up in the hype. He was studying a problem his defense could already feel. So if Belichick was already talking this way in 2018, the real question is simple. What did he see that everybody else missed? It's easy to forget this now, but Patrick Mahomes did not enter the NFL as some clean, can't-miss future legend. He entered as an argument. At Texas Tech, the production was absurd. In 2016 alone, he threw for 5,052 yards and 41 touchdowns, ran for 12 more, and became one of only a handful of FBS players to post multiple seasons with 5,000 total yards. The talent was screaming at you. So were the concerns. Scouts loved the arm, the creativity, the swagger, the ability to make throws. Most quarterbacks wouldn't even attempt. They also saw mechanics that could get messy, a style that drifted off schedule, and a quarterback whose college environment made projection harder than the highlights suggested. NFL.com called him a sandlot player with extraordinary arm talent but an unorthodox style that could drive coaches crazy. ESPN's Todd McShay later summed up the pre-draft split perfectly. Incredible results, but mechanics all over the place and a steep learning curve ahead. That's what made Mahomes such a fascinating prospect. He looked spectacular on tape and risky on paper at the exact same time. And that's the part people rewrite after greatness arrives. They act like everybody knew. They didn't. Most people saw volatility. Belichick seems to have seen survivability. This is where Belichick's early respect starts to mean something real. Not because he said Mahomes had a big arm. Plenty of people said that. What mattered was how he described the effect of that arm. In October 2018, Belichick said Mahomes could throw the ball out of the stadium and made the point that if Kansas City had the ball on its own 2-0 yard line, a defense still had to protect all the way to the goal line. That's not hype, that's geometry. That's a coach telling you one quarterback can stretch the field so far that normal defensive spacing stops being normal. And that's the first real clue in this whole story. Mahomes didn't become dangerous only when the ball went deep. He became dangerous before the snap because his arm changed how safeties could sit, how corners could leverage routes, and how long a defense had to stay perfect. The fear started early. One throw didn't just beat you. The threat of the throw changed the structure of the call itself. That's what Belichick seems to have recognized before most people did. Mahomes wasn't just creating highlights. He was warping the field. And once a defense starts worrying about all that grass, Mahomes has already won the first part of the snap. The first real proof came fast. On the 14th of October 2018, New England beat Kansas City 43-40 inches. Foxborough. 3 months later, the Patriots beat them again 37-31 inches overtime in the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead. That matters because this section isn't about Mahomes beating Belichick right away. It's about something more interesting than that. Belichick got the wins, and still, the danger was obvious. In the regular season game, Mahomes threw for 352 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the AFC title game, he threw for 295 yards and 3 more scores. And the part people forget is how violent those momentum swings felt in real time. In the championship game, Kansas City took the lead with about 8 minutes left. New England answered, Kansas City answered again, and the whole thing turned into a stress test of who could survive the last wave. Patriots' own recap says Mahomes and the Chiefs needed only 10 seconds to turn a Patriots turnover into a go-ahead touchdown in the fourth quarter. That's not normal pressure. That's a quarterback who can flip the emotional temperature of a game almost instantly. That's why these games matter so much in this story. Belichick didn't need Mahomes to beat him first to understand the threat. He could see the arm, the speed, the recovery after chaos. The way one clean drive could suddenly become 3 explosive plays and a completely different game. New England survived both nights. But survival was the word. Not comfort, not control. Survival. And that's what made the early read so unsettling. Belichick could beat Mahomes and still know what was coming next. This is the part that makes the whole story stronger, because real warnings don't get vindicated in a straight line. They have to survive the years when people start doubting what they thought they saw. Mahomes hit that wall too. In October 2019, he suffered a patella dislocation against Denver, a brutal knee injury serious enough to stop the whole league for a second. By the time Kansas City came to Foxborough that December, Patriots preview coverage noted he was still dealing with the effects of that injury, even while playing at a high level. Then came the other kind of resistance, the kind that attacks reputation. In Super Bowl LV, Tampa Bay beat Kansas City 31-9, and suddenly the conversation shifted. For stretches after that, defenses leaned harder into too high looks, forced patience, cut off explosives, and people started saying the league had finally cracked the code. That's what makes this section important. The early Belichick read wasn't built for perfect conditions. It had to survive injury, a lopsided Super Bowl loss, and the first real wave of maybe we've figured him out takes. Because if Belichick was right, then the truth about Mahomes had to hold up even when the magic looked easier to doubt. The payoff wasn't just that Patrick Mahomes kept winning. It was that he changed. That's what makes Belichick's early read hit harder now than it did in 2018. Early Mahomes terrified defenses with the obvious stuff, the off-platform lasers, the impossible arm angles, the deep shots that made secondaries look helpless. But the later version became even worse for the league, because he stopped needing chaos on every drive. He learned how to take the boring answer without losing the violent one. And once that happened, the problem got bigger, not smaller. The resume matters, but only because it tracks that evolution. Mahomes has won multiple league MVPs and 3 Super Bowl MVPs. And the Chiefs' official bio notes he became the first player in the 21st century to win both league MVP and Super Bowl MVP in the same season in 2022. He also already had 3 Super Bowl titles by the end of the 2023 season. But the real story isn't the hardware. It's the way his game hardened. When defenses leaned harder into too high looks and tried to bait him into impatience, there was a stretch where the offense looked less explosive and people thought the cheat code was gone. Then Mahomes adjusted. Instead of forcing the old version of the game, he started punishing teams a different way. More patience, more control, more acceptance of what the defense was giving him, and then sudden punishment, the second discipline slipped. Analysis from that 2022-23 swing showed he had learned to neutralize the too-high blueprint that had slowed Kansas City the year before. That's the part that should have really scared the league. The quarterback Belichick respected early didn't stay a highlight machine, he turned into a complete one. He could still beat you with brilliance. Now he could also beat you with restraint. And that's when an old compliment stops sounding polite and starts sounding prophetic. Most people judge a young quarterback by style. How pretty the throw looks, how big the play feels, how loud the upside sounds on draft night. Belichick was looking at a different question entirely. What happens to a defense after the play stops going the way it was supposed to? That's where Mahomes was always different. Not just because he could launch the ball 60 yards, because he could survive the moment when coverage held, the rush leaked through, the pocket bent, and the first answer died.
Belichick's 2018 comments kept circling the same pressure points: arm strength, mobility, quick release,
And the ability to do everything well. That's not a scout getting seduced by talent. That's a defensive coach mapping out consequences. That's why he sounded early. The public saw a spectacular passer. Belichick saw a quarterback who could punish correct football. A defense could disguise the coverage, keep leverage, survive the first phase, and still get hit anyway. That's the nightmare, not the highlight, the aftermath. And once you understand that, the whole story flips. Belichick wasn't admiring flair. He was recognizing a trait that usually breaks great defenses over time: the ability to stay dangerous after structure collapses. And once you see Mahomes through that lens, the old Belichick comments don't sound casual at all. Go back to that 2018 week. Same Belichick voice, same dry delivery, no drama, no performance, just a coach talking about a quarterback the way coaches actually talk when they know the problem is real. Flat, technical, almost easy to miss if you don't understand what you're hearing. But that's what made it different. Belichick wasn't selling Patrick Mahomes to the public. He was outlining the kind of stress Mahomes put on a defense: arm strength, mobility, quick release, and the ability to make every part of the field feel exposed. That was the warning. It just didn't sound like one yet. 7 years later, the league has lived the rest of the sentence. Bill Belichick didn't warn us that Patrick Mahomes would be a star. He warned the league that some quarterbacks don't just beat defenses. They change what defense is. If you enjoyed this one, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stick around, because the NFL is full of old warnings that make a whole lot more sense once history catches up. Click the screen right now for the next video, because this wasn't the only time the NFL told us exactly what was coming.